What is going on, everybody? Happy Friday night here. Um, but look, if you're just right here hanging out, even if it's only for a second, greatly appreciate. Got some things going on, this Friday night, man. Dodgers Yankees game one of the World Series. It's in the seventh inning right now. The Yankees are leading 2-1. It's an exciting time in sports. I think that really goes without saying. But look, we got a very big game because I think it's needless to say that this is probably one of Falcons have played up to this point in the season. And the Falcons have had some pretty big matchups on prime time. The Falcons faced the Buccaneers in prime time a few weeks ago at home, and obviously we know how that game went. But when you're talking about what I think is at stake for both of these teams in this game, this is without a shadow of a doubt the biggest game, maybe for both teams this season, or at least one of the biggest. This is the Falcons as they go down. They go down to Tampa to take on the Tampa. Whenever the Falcons go down to Tampa, I'm gonna say this. It's always, it's just one of those. It feels like more times than not, it's gonna come down to the wire. I'd expect Sunday to maybe be the same thing. I would. All the different factors going into this game. These are two teams that you are fighting for the same thing, which is to win this division. But before we get started, y'all know the drill. Good stuff. You share it out. Greatly appreciated. And of course, if you want to support, not for really tight on money, really tight to come by $1, but if you feeling so, it's there for the Cash App. Not forcing anyone to do it, not pushing anyone. If you feel so kind to do it, yeah, y'all want to support. But hey, you don't, you can't. I'm not holding it against. Yeah, this is a very big game Sunday, and I feel like with what you've looked at so far from the Falcons this season, it's been points. There's been some high points, and then you've had games like last week where we kind of were brought back down to earth a little bit. It really and it feels like pretty soon, and it could be this Sunday. It's always been around this point. The Falcons have that turning point game in the season, and more times than not, that game has basically derailed all the momentum that a season that we have built in the early portion of a season, because Falcons typically, they've been in a spot where it's 4-3 heading into this type of game. It's been 3-4. So when looking at this game, this is going to tell us a lot about them. You're going to learn a lot about the Falcons in January potentially in this game. And I understand by yet, which by the way, I do plan on probably sometime this upcoming week. I don't want to make any promises, but hopefully, I'll be able to get on here and talk a little bit about the trade deadline because I think we can all agree that being a spot where you could contend this year. I'm not saying, throw the barn, a little something to shake things up. But yeah, no, this is really that point of the type of season this is going to be. Now, is that type of game for Raheem Morris? Through the first 7 weeks, he has this team over 500. We've been feeling pretty good about where this team is. We have found a way to go. At the end of the day, sometimes in the NFL, you gotta win games how you could win them. That's, I think, the way you gotta look at it. But now we want to see actual progression. Now we want to see action and become consistent. We want to see growth from this team. And I'm not just talking about that to talk like some people do up at the podium. I'm saying when out on the field, I want to see growth, especially from a certain portion of this team. However, I think when looking at this type of game, it's Raheem Morris going back to Tampa, where he was head coach at, so many years ago. When he was, I mean, he was pretty new to this coaching thing. So now for him to come back all these years later as head coach, has a whole lot more knowledge. He's, been around the league a whole lot more. Him coming back to type of game you're looking at and you say, this can determine your season team. And I think that's what Sunday's going to be. Now, as far as been through it, the defense, no doubt, probably had their worst game of the entire year, and the offense could not complement at all. We've seen points where the offense has, carried, but last week they weren't able to. And you can't expect your offense to carry every week. At some point, your defense is going to have to pick up the load. For Tampa is that both Mike Evans and Chris Godwin will not be playing. And Mike Evans, he is going to be out, I think, until like week 12. So, you can chop it up however you want to. You can try to make the excuse. You could try to even say, regardless, the result is tainted but that's the reality of the NFL. It is. That's the reality of the NFL. And even though it's very unfortunate, every team deals with it. We've dealt with it in years past where we've had several star players go down and play solid depth pieces. And able to do that on Sunday. But with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin being out, obviously that is a sigh of relief in some aspects for a defense that did not look good last week versus DK Metcalf, versus Seattle's receiving corps that got torn up by Geno Smith. But the one thing we've learned about Tampa is that Tampa arguably might have a three-headed monster in the backfield that can absolutely eat you alive in their own respective way. Rachaad White is your scat back. He's going to be the guy. Honestly, I would expect with Evans and Godwin being out, because they got Sterling Shepard on that team. They got that McMillan kid or whatever his name is. They got that other dude. I'm trying to think of his name too. They got Kadon at tight end. But look, that their three-headed monster in Rachaad White, who is their scat back, and then they're really going to try to use. They use Rachaad White in a lot of ways that we use Bijan. They love to get him involved out of the backfield. They love to get him going on little swing routes. It could be, you name it. They love to get him going out of that backfield. Whereas a guy like Bucky Irvin, he'll just absolutely wear you down. He'll move all over you. And Sean Tucker, someone who's come along in recent weeks, he also has had some very nice showing. So I got no doubt that Tampa is absolutely with their run. One of the things we have to factor in, and I think that this is obviously very important. One of the things that needs to be factored in, stop the run, and they were prevalent again last week versus Seattle. Over this defense, they had great success running to the outside early on, and that really allowed them to get up early and set a tempo to where the Falcons could not crawl back into the game late. So if you don't believe Tampa's going to try to do the same thing, you're a fool, because they absolutely now see how in many ways to take advantage of the fact they've also played the Falcons once. They've seen the Falcons' weaknesses. And even though you're without your top two receivers, the Falcons cannot stop the running game for shit. And if you're going to win Sunday, you're going to have to be able to Baker Mayfield can scramble too. And that leads me to my next point. And this is going to kind of haven't done in general, because the first few weeks I've tried to give Jimmy get the shit together with the defense. You know, it looked pretty solid for the first few weeks. We saw them hold Pittsburgh, to scoring no touchdowns. They were able to keep Philadelphia in check. And heck, they kept the Chiefs in check in many ways to where the Falcons could hang around that entire game. But it feels like, especially last week, the ugly head of not being able to get to the quarterback has been sticking out. And it really, is going to create problems for this Falcons team. So when you get up to a podium and you say, well, we're evolving, we're evolving, we're, making strides, and then saying stats don't matter. Now I'll say this, yes, stats don't matter. Because when I'm looking on the field last week, y'all know me. Y'all know I go to these games. Y'all know I see this. I see this up front and in person. And I'm seeing guys doing the cha-cha slide when the quarterback is right in front of them. All they got to do is slam him on the ground, wrap him up, get both hands on him, and get him on the ground, and you're not able to do it. That is an issue. And that's my one thing so far with Jimmy Lake and Raheem Morris, for that fact. That this is my one thing. As much as, I love the vision Raheem has, he's clearly great. The one thing that I am not liking is this whole we're just going to trust the process, basically. It's the trust the process shit. And that's just one of those things I can't roll with. Week 2, week 3, okay. We were at least getting, 2, maybe even 3. Well, I don't think we've had a game where we've gotten over 2 sacks. But you at least saw, week 1, week 2, you saw Matthew Judon getting to the quarterback. Matthew Judon ain't gotten the quarterback on the ground since week 2. That's an issue. How does it for this guy? This whole thing, we don't have a pass rusher. Now, Dewey is Matthew is he Max Crosby? No, he's not. But he's supposed to be our pass rusher. I'm kind of not buying it because what did we do right before the season started? We went and we got a pass rusher. This is solely at this point, and granted, Matthew Judon is aging, and he's not the same guy he was a few years ago. I don't think he's no longer a 15 sack guy, but you would at least have liked to see him, be and left to go. But throughout these first 7 weeks, I've been very direct. You're not seeing Arnold Ebiketie, wrecking havoc in that backfield like the way you want to see it. You're not seeing the quarterback getting pressured. And that's an issue. That's going to be an issue as the season goes on if you're doing a cha-cha slide and you can't get the quarterback to the ground. So that's really been my big issue. This whole we're evolving, we're doing this, we're doing that. It irks the wrong nerve with me. It really does. So as far as this defense goes, you absolutely, I'm going to have to see something. And I'm not just talking, I'm not just meaning this and talk anymore. Sunday, I want to see this defense getting active. And I'm not just talking about 4 in the front 7, getting to Baker Mayfield, stopping the run consistently, stalling their drives. That you cannot allow a defense, or an offense to dominate you the way you've been dominated in recent weeks, and especially last week versus Seattle. That's why I say you hope that game's an outlier, but that game really showed where a lot of your errors are at. Now, as far as this offense goes, I really feel like it's very tough to determine how to play this game. Last time, we know that Kirk went off for 500 yards, and Tampa seen it. We know it. Baltimore just sit there and Kirk is in there. If you get in a spot where you get up early, Tampa wants it. This is going to be a game of who can create domination first, who can establish the tempo. Because I don't expect this to be another 36-30 type game. This could easily be a game to where the team that comes out the fastest first is the team that ends up winning. Now, I feel like when you're factoring a lot of these things in when talking about this game, this is a game you have to have. This is a game you have to have. This is a game you got to win. A new era. This is a new team. This is, a this game, because there have been so many Falcons teams in years past that would have easily have lost this game, even with all of Tampa's injuries. or even if they did win, would have made it so damn difficult to win. Now, of course, the win is winning. I want to see the Falcons look good when winning this game. So, be a close game. This could absolutely, be a close game. But this isn't going to be another game where you're going to go into overtime and win it. This now, look, it could be a very close game, but it's not going to be another one of those overtime games. This is going to have to be the type of game that you come out and you establish a tone early. And, but with that being said, this is you'll get a sweep over the Buccaneers. That's something you haven't done since 2018, I believe. That you have not swept Tampa since 2018. Falcons actually haven't swept anybody since 2019 when we swept Carolina. So it's been a long time since we've done some sweeping. Falcons have an opportunity to do that Sunday. And if you sweep Tampa, you would own the tiebreaker over them head to head in the division. And this is the team that you really talk about it. This is the team you got to beat to win this division. And if you can sweep them, that puts you in an absolutely amazing spot. And I'm willing to say if the Falcons can win this game Sunday, and obviously there's still a lot of season left to play, you're feeling really, really good about what things could be looking like come mid-January. But you got to take care of business Sunday. You have to win. Because this game could be the difference of if you're getting a home playoff game or not, or how early you're able to lock that up. As you say, the earlier you're able to get that thing locked up, the earlier you're able to get that off of your back, the better. Because then you can focus on bigger things. That's how you got to think with this. Now as far as I think number one, I think you got to come firing early, and I'm talking that's getting you running. That's playing a balanced style of football. That's playing the football you played versus Carolina. I'm going to be honest. That's getting Tyler Algier involved, getting Bijan involved. Obviously getting the ball to Drake and Darnell. Kyle Pitts, listen, the past few weeks, Kyle Pitts has had a bigger presence. So, yeah, you have to be able, if you get everyone involved, that does you very well. I think the second key to victory is linebackers. And I know I talk about getting to the quarterback, but Tampa is absolutely going to try to get their running game going. And linebackers are going to have to be a big, big part of it in stopping the run. And that means Nate Landman having a big game. The landmine, the landman, whatever you want to call him. I've said this. I think he's one of the best players on this defense. He's got to get active Sunday. He's got to be making some plays. And the third key to victory, I'm going to say it's kind of tough to really pick out of all of them, but playing mistake-free football. That's another thing. Playing mistake-free football, or at least minimizing those mistakes. I think you only had maybe one, maybe two turnovers versus Tampa, but last week you had 3 turnovers that absolutely killed you. And look, you play these types of games, you got to play them mistake free. If you do those 3 things, you can easily get a win in this one. I think you can get a win in this one if you do those few things. Now, as far as 28-26 in my picks video earlier, and I really don't know if I'm gonna stick with that. Or you know what, I may stick with 28-26. But obviously the final score doesn't, have to necessarily tell. Listen, I've said this. Just because Tampa Bay is banged up, you still cannot underestimate them as a team. Tampa is still going to play us tough. This is a big game for them too. The same, but because Tampa's trying to avoid getting swept. So their backs are really against the wall in this one. So the way you got to look at this, I think, is pretty simple. It's a big one for both teams. Absolutely a big one for both teams. But I do think the Falcons are going to come away with the win Sunday. I do. And maybe if you would have asked me at another point, maybe I would have said, I don't know. But I really feel like in many ways the Falcons they are in a position to where they can get a win in this game. But you got to come out. You got to do those few things. And the defense is going to actually – it can't just be talk from Jimmy Lake. It's got to be shown. It's time to put that shit on the field now. All your evolving, all your evolution, it's got to be put on the field now. Anyways, with that being said, obviously, I know a little bit of a short preview here. But look, it's a very big game Sunday. Obviously, I'm pumped, ready to see what this team does. This honestly, many feelings of a playoff game. And I know you could say that first game we're staking this game. You're talking about, potentially big, are at stake. So if you can get the win here, that absolutely sways everything in your favor. With that being said, y'all take care, y'all take it easy, and I will see you all in the